Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased this morning to host the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Monica MUSENERO. She's a Ugandan veterinarian, microbiologist, and epidemiologist who has consulted in the different areas of epidemiology in this country. And you saw her very, very active in the fight against COVID-19, in the fight against Ebola, and she has worked in several countries trying to do this work. She has done this work in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as in Sierra Leone. So her profile is a large one in research. She has done great work in epidemiology. It is now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome the Honorable Minister to speak to us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Honorable.
I don't know who is around, so forgive if my protocol is not right. I'm privileged to be invited to speak this morning, and I would like to share my screen. So thank you very much, members. Thank you for having me to speak with you. As a minister newly appointed, I'm eager to reach out and find all the partners and all the support that I need to make sure that I succeed. So it's a privilege for me to be given this forum to share with you my vision, which is going to answer the question that you sent me. I have been corresponding with my staff, Mary Nantongo. I'm not sure if she's already here, but she has tried to provide me with as much information. So you requested me to share with you the role that researchers have in advancing the mission of science, technology, and innovation. So I'll speak with you on, kindly, if you're not hearing me, you indicate. Sometimes the network is not good, you indicate, so I adjust. So I'll have some general background, then some historical background. Then we'll look at our situation, and I'll share with you the new direction that science, technology, and innovation in the country is taking, and then share with you the technical approach and where scientists and researchers fit in. So being part of government, we are called to contribute to achieving the national vision. And this vision was set forth in several years ago. This was developed 2007, 2008, and officially launched. It officially started in 2010 and was launched in 2013, I think, by the president. And the aspiration is that we shall have a transformed Ugandan society from a peasant to a modern and prosperous country within 30 years. Now, from 2010, that gives us how many more years to come. So we have covered 11 of those years, and we have 19. And we have a few steps to, and in my interpretation of Vision 2040, I know that many of you have already read that document. It's the national strategic document that we are following. I know many people speak disparagingly against it, but that is the strategic document that we are following. And it is aimed at moving us from the map on the left to of the screen. That is where the poverty map, that was the poverty map in 2010, I think. Where is poverty in Uganda? And poverty, it was still very intense in the east, in the Karamoja region, a little lighter in the central and south and western, but it was still quite high. And to the right of the screen is the aspiration of where we want to go with modern infrastructure, our people living in a relatively working hard, but modern environment. And the government identified several pillars that they had to address: the human resource, physical infrastructure. That's why you always hear the president talking about roads and electricity and making sure that those things are there. Then you see science, then science, technology, engineering, and innovation, then ICT, infrastructure. Those were the interventions that are needed. And then below are the sectors identified as critical in developing that future and building the bridge between where we were and where we want to go. But you also notice that both up and down, everything had to change by research, because knowledge is the store of the future that you have. Basically, knowledge is your mine. It is your wealth mine, and it has the potential, but it has to be exploited. If you don't exploit it, you don't benefit from it. Just like anything, you can have oil in the ground, and if oil is not exploited and explored and researched and developed, it will remain that. So knowledge is also the same way. And when it comes to how did the Vision 2040 envision the people, the population, when you look on the upper, there's that big green there, that is subsistence agriculture, where the majority of the population was, and very, very little people, very, very few are employed in industry. And the future 2040, we want to have very few people in agriculture and the majority in services and industry. Now that means that something needs to convert the population. And over the past years and over the past decades, especially since His Excellency took power, we have been through several phases where we've tried to do economic structuring this way, that way. However, without research, without revelation of new knowledge, without creating that value through research, it becomes just utilizing raw materials, because the knowledge of the population is supposed to interact with what God has given you in the environment to make sure that you convert that into the future. And in many countries, even when they have very, very limited resources, they can create a future by converting the knowledge in the minds of their population, basically through research, innovation, and making that available to, in terms of technology, in terms of new approaches, in terms of managing the environment, so that they can have a future which they desire to have. So from time immemorial, science, technology, and innovation is what is known to really transform societies and economies and move us forward. And the gap between developed countries and the underdeveloped countries is more a reflection of how they have harnessed science, technology, and innovation through research and development, and how they have adopted the technology which emerges out of it, so that they can now affect how their people live and how their people do their business, and also what they sell on the market. So for any society to develop, citizens of that society must take responsibility to translate the knowledge and creativity into products. Now, as we'll see later in my talk, we have a lot of knowledge, Our weakness is we do not translate the knowledge into products. And because of that, we do a lot of research, but it doesn't show up so much in the way our people live. So how we view research and knowledge and science and technology, especially in the academia, is very, very, very important. And that view and that belief, or the philosophy, or the policies which come up that you adopt either officially as a country, as institutions, or as individuals, as the body of researchers see where they are going, the overall, what we have adopted has denied us to benefit a lot, because we were really supposed to be at par with many institutions. And it is not just absence of raw materials, not absence of money. It is just that we have not recognized the brains of our citizens as the biggest resource in creating a future that we want to be. And this shows up and has been reflected in the way we also have handled research. So we have made our research about official statements. So we have conferences, we have so many, declarations, so many policies. People have been telling me, which policies are you going? I don't think that it is really policies that we lack. What we lack is something a little different. Then we also made research a little elitist. If I'm not a PhD, I may not be able to do research. And then we made it about money. If there is no money, no research takes place. I got this quote from a book called Men of Invention. This book describes how the people who started the development of industry in the UK, and how individuals started individually to do research and start to develop the ship industry. UK, at that time, the United Kingdom didn't have a lot. Britain didn't have a lot. They were poor, they were weak militarily. There were many other nations that were more advanced, that could build big vessels, because then they were beginning to do exploration. Now, these men, this is how Macaulay summarizes who they were. He said the men, they have been ignorant of letters. They were not really educated people. And they were not without art or eloquence, who yet had the wisdom to devise and the courage to perform that which they lacked language to explain. Such men have worked the deliverance of nations and their own greatness. Their hearts are their books, events are their tutors, great actions are their eloquence. This statement touched me so much as an incoming minister, that there is something I must create in individuals, both land and non-land, that there is greatness in their hearts. And if they can dare and determine to harness that knowledge, then we will be able to convert it into development for our nation. So this is what I call upon all of us, whether we are land of letters or not, we must be able to convert our knowledge, the capacity in our brains into transformed lives. So let's look briefly about the history of research in Uganda. So STI is Science, Technology, and Innovation. So STI in Africa, it has been very sobering, and I never paid a lot of attention to some of these things until about a year ago. We were at the forefront of science, technology, and innovation before colonialism. It is amazing to see. I'm sure there are some history researchers here. If they are not, then it is really good to look into the history of science of Uganda, of Africa. And the picture is totally different from what has been painted for us. Like we have always been backward and we have just been helped by people from out. Absolutely no. Our development of science was actually ahead of that of Europe. I've read of stories where Europeans actually came to benchmark here in Uganda, in Toro, where we had the best cesarean sections. They had the best survival rates, low infections. Both mother and children were surviving here at a much, much higher rate than in Europe. And people traveled for months to come and benchmark and learn from us. But now when you look, you don't really know. You don't see what happened. So this development of innovations and technology development, it was cut off by colonialism. And since then, we have suffered from a great mental disorientation. We have an inferiority complex where we think we cannot create things on our own. And so we are so dependent. And sometimes we live in oblivion as to the purpose and intent of research in a country. Knowledge is one step on the way, but unless that knowledge can be converted into something that changes lives, and globally, this is what happens. Somebody discovers internet, they build an industry out of it. Somebody discovers electromagnetic waves, they build an industry around it. Somebody discovers a printing press or some machinery, some mechanism, they build an industrial printing press. They discover quantum medicine, they build something. Now for us, we think just knowledge is enough. And this has resulted in the gap. We are not short of knowledge. A lot of researchers are here. A lot of people really study and they contribute a lot to the body of knowledge globally. But while that knowledge seriously transforms other people's lives, our mindset is not right. So for decades, Uganda's science, technology, and innovation agenda has been invested in researchers. This is, I'll share with you briefly the history. For the sake of time, I'll not read everything, but starting right from pre-independence, there was the East Africa Science and Technology Commission with the headquarters in Nairobi, and that was the springboard of the universities, including Makerere University, and they formed in one university with campuses in the East Africa countries, each hosting a different specialty. And that was the beginning of research. And after independence in 1962, we tried to desire for a future. We wanted to industrialize, have industries now which were relevant to the new independent countries. However, although there was some national research council which was set up to guide research efforts, most of the focus was like the pre-independence, to improve productivity and then control diseases. After that, there were some continental efforts because science really kind of became relegated in Uganda. And we had very, very little national push between 1962, but international bodies like UNESCO tried to push for us to have science and develop. Okay. And this timeline gives us a glimpse in that period. When the national resistance movement came in 1986, then 1987, there was that clear gap that although we have education, the education didn't seem to align with the aspirations of where we wanted to go. And the Kajubi Commission took to look into research, to look into national development. It was to look into the national education system. Then by 1988, 1999, the president felt that changing, because if I remember, I was at university during that time when Professor Senteza Kajubi, the commission came out and they started to implement, and there was chaos in Makerere. Then the president said, well, let me just have a new university and start something new. And that was the origin of the Mbarara University of Science and Technology. It was meant to be purely development science and to be transformed. I haven't been there to benchmark to see how it is doing. I'm looking forward to doing that. And by 1990, really the desire to direct the development through science, technology, and innovation was upbeat, and the president was looking how can they somehow begin to direct the country into development through technological transformation. And in 1990, the National Council of Science and Technology was formed. And then between 1990 and 1997, we entered a period of economic recovery, and the focus was on trying to just patch up the country, and research, science, technology was more to try and build the human resource. There was quite a bit of efforts. I remember there was a program called the ARTP for those of us who are in the agriculture sciences, agricultural research training program, and they sent many of us out to study, so as to come and beef up the capacity in the universities. And unfortunately, not many people came back. In these slides, there is quite a lot of history that demonstrates the footprint. There was the Professor McGregor's commission that looked at the universities, because despite all those interventions, somehow research has not been touching. There have been, of course, a few momentous things like the HIV research, where we got knowledge that has impacted globally. And then there's a lot of research to document what the challenges that we have, a lot of it. And there's an increase in research in every course, almost from diploma level. Every student learns about research. And undergraduates and masters and PhD. So there's been an increase in research. What there hasn't been an increase of is translation of that research into solutions and improvements in how we live and how we do our business. By 2011, the president spearheaded the presidential initiative to support science, technology, and innovations at Makerere. We have the Omaswa Task Force, which was set up when there was so much unrest at the university. Actually, the president is surprised that people with so much knowledge continue striking for livelihood, for a living wage. He keeps asking, why can't they convert the knowledge into wealth? And there were many recommendations. And of course, then we have the national development plans. And in the National Development Plan 1, the NDP 1, which was the first implementation strategy for the Vision 2040, it recommended beyond just having the National Council of Science and Technology, which was an institution and Minister of Finance, for us to have a substantive ministry. Of course, in between there, in 2005, there had been the formation of NARO, the National Agriculture Research Organization, and in 2007, there was the formation of UNRO, the Uganda National Health Research Organization, also as coordinating entities to promote research, science and technology development and industrialization in those specific sectors. So this was actualized in the NDP2 as we were moving, and the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation was established in 2016 with a mandate to provide overall policy guidance and coordination for scientific research, development, and the whole national innovation system in Uganda. So that is a bit of history. Of course, the president has kept pushing for restructuring because something somehow is not holding up. So when COVID came last year in 2020, there was such a frustration because despite all these efforts, we were totally ill-prepared. We have a good people, that's the good thing. We have a lot of skilled people, but it was not showing up very well because we reached a point, the first lockdown was because we did not have basic tools. It's not because the virus was here, but we didn't have basic tools. And the president appointed me as his presidential advisor and also gave me a responsibility to look into research, especially for developing tools, developing vaccines, developing diagnostics, developing, and after doing 2 weeks of investigation, trying to understand, I told him there's so many researchers, there's so many scientists, they just need a little bit of guidance. I don't need to build a lab because the imagination was I should build new labs, and because according to him, it didn't look like there was a lot of research going on. But after benchmarking on those specific areas, I discovered that we had a lot of capacity. But if we have a lot of capacity, what's the problem? Now, the problem partly, as I went through, I summarized, and none of this may fit one person or one research, but especially this research is mostly biased to science, technology, and innovation-related science. So I found research models that were prevailing, and the first category of researchers were single outstanding researchers. Most of them, at the point I found them, supported by either presidential initiative or formally supported directly by a presidential initiative. And either they have left the university where they were and they are pushing forward something. So there were a handful of these where one researcher does basic research, does product development, and steps out in the rude world of commercialization And basically, not many of them have managed to hit the market or build industries that are significant. Many of them are still stuck at prototyping. The second one was the public good. Now, this is the most successful mode of research, mostly with the government institutions where they are given money and they research to solve a national problem. They're researching to, for example, we have a cassava hit by a virus and we need a resistant, and it is done and we develop, there is increasing drought. So we have a drought resistant strains. This has been quite successful. However, it is not aimed at building the vision, the transformation. People continue to survive better, we can still have our staple foods. I have looked and I haven't found a single industry, commercial entity that has resulted from massive efforts of research. So this budget annually, and then you give the money, you give the output to private sector, and then we disseminate, and we basically remain there. And these have done very well. There is a lot of research, especially in institutions like NARO. They've done very well to keep the country going through, developed some good outputs. Then the third one is the sector model. This is where government funds through sectors. And this is what we find where either money is put in the Ministry of Education or money is put in the Ministry of Agriculture or any other sector. And then these people apply for grants. The funds are provided through a sector. And then there is an attempt at being democratic. Everybody should apply and people get small grants. This has sparked innovation, and when I go through all the universities and other sectors, other research entities, I find quite a few prototypes or pre-prototypes. They were quite, however, because I call it sprinkle effect, the money is not enough to push anything through to industry. And this is the last model I found. Forgive my use of the word slave. It just represents, here the researchers are given basic sustenance. You have a research institution, either the university or another, and there is basic infrastructure. You have an office, some staff, but really in terms of research, these researchers focus on writing grants because the university, the government has not provided sufficient funds. They write research proposals to foreign donors, often in consortia with the Western, and this is the booming model currently. Now, it's the booming model. They write the proposals, and then the researcher, the expected benefit is subsistence, some top up on your salary, travel, publications, promotion, and presentations at international conferences. The scientists are typically unaware or uninterested in products which they yield to the funding agencies. So this is the kind of the research which has been going on. We have a lot of social science research. We have a lot of, but because my docket is mainly technology, I will keep. So how far has this so far, all these initiatives taken us? UNTAD 2020 published a report. They were requested by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation to do an evaluation of how we are doing in terms of implementation and in terms of moving through to the vision, because science, technology and innovation has been given that role of the blade head that will lead the country, as you saw in my first slides. In spite, this is a quotation, a quote, direct quote, it says, in spite of a record of strong growth and a healthy attitude toward entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial risk that provides fertile ground for innovation, structural transformation processes in Uganda have been stalling in the last decade. The interpretation is that although people are trying to do business, they are doing business with the same technology or the same innovations, or they have to import these things, and therefore nothing is seriously changing, and we are exhausting whatever we had, because new knowledge must be injected in order for society to move forward. Another quotation from that report is that for us to meet the challenges confronting the country and enable Vision 2040, Ugandan development stakeholders need a revitalized effort to deploy science, technology, and innovation as catalysts of transformational economic development, which will address the challenges of inclusiveness and environmental sustainability. This report came out in December 2020, and one of the indicators used to measure the impact of our national innovation, science, technology, and innovation is the index, the Global Innovation Index. If you look at this curve, the Uganda is the blue line. We had a bit of, we started somewhere quite low, and then we had a rise. 2013, between there we had a grant, a World Bank grant called MSI. So there was very active research in multiple sectors. But since then, our index has been dropping. If you compare us with Kenya, Kenya is the friend there. They're also dropping a bit. And then you go to South Africa is the gray, and the upper yellow one is China. What were some of the key challenges that have been found? One, we have a lot of duplications and overlaps. We lack a harmonized national science, technology, and innovation agenda. We have a lot of glaring gaps in coordination and regulation, and so there's a fragmented ecosystem. And then we have what we call cannibalistic competition. This may not apply to you if you are not in the science, technology, and innovation, but this is in this area, in this ministry, we have found that there was so much competition for one thing, and then there's glaring gaps. So these are challenges that we have identified. And as a result of those issues, on the 22nd of June, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, directed that the portfolio of science, technology, and innovation be placed in the office of the President under State House. So what has happened is the President abolished the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. And we are now in the process of reconstructing that portfolio and structure and system under his direct supervision and stewardship. And it is in this process that I would like to share with you what we have in place in the next few minutes, what we are putting in place to avoid getting into the same things that frustrated him, and we begin to move to the future. So this is what has been my work over the last 3 months as minister. This is my 4th month. So the aim of the changes which are taking place is to make sure that we revitalize the efforts, just like the UN study found. We now are in the process of that revitalization, as they gave that recommendation that we need to make sure that we revitalize these efforts. And we are aiming to revitalize those efforts to deploy science technology as a catalyst of transformational economic development, we're structuring and configuring elements represented by the major sectors engaged in science, technology, and innovation into an institutionalized, coordinated, and functional innovation system for sustainable socioeconomic development. We have a quite good number of research institutions, and they're quite doing a lot of work. It is just not showing up on the front of national development as it should. There is something, but not as it should. So these are the components of the innovation system, and that here I'm beginning to answer your questions. What are the roles of the national innovation, of researchers? So rather than looking at institutions and looking at discrete units, we are trying to connect everything into a national innovation, I've called it National Science, Technology, and Innovation System, and bringing together all the different players, bringing together the public sector, that's government, bringing together the scientific research entities, including NEMRA, bringing together the business people because they are the ones who will sell, bringing together the international community to really contribute to research, which drives our nation forward, not just funding research, whichever way it comes from, because we have a small body of researchers. If they are so engaged with the looking at other people's interests, we need the international agencies to support us because we still don't have enough money, but we want them to look at what we need, not what they need. And civil society, and so we are bringing together everybody in this area, and not just bringing them together into some, but we are making this, we are planning together, we are making decision together, as you'll see shortly. And our goal now, and very, very purposeful, is we want to contribute to grow the contribution of knowledge-based goods and services, not just knowledge, it's the goods and services to the national economy by increasing domestic productivity, import substitution, and export of products resulting from science, technology, and innovation. The core strategies are multi-sector engagement and collaboration. And so I need really to collaborate with as many entities. So we've converted the head office. It's no longer a ministry. We do not have the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. This is now a secretariat under the president's office headed by a minister. So it's not a typical sector. We are still in the process of building it. 3 months is too little. The focus is on industrial value chains, not just researching anything which seems good. And then there is a business model which has been developed and is being refined so that science, technology, and innovation, research and development is looked at as a business for the researchers and also for the country. Not in the typical way of business, but we are not investing just in knowledge to stay in a pool. So that knowledge becomes a dead sea. We are investing in knowledge to come out as products and services and improved livelihoods. So what have we done? How are we achieving this? One, creating a very supportive and responsive administration functions. That's why we have done away with a typical ministry setup where there's a lot of hierarchy and bureaucracy to create a more supportive environment. Then with think tanks, I'll talk a little bit more about the think tanks because you should be on these think tanks. They are ongoing. Really, research has been, the work of the minister has been brought to the researchers. It's you who are talking, who are discussing, who are setting the priorities, who are planning, and it's you going to do the work. then strategic advisory services, so that we don't just do things, but there is a national strategy and it's a very high advisory into it. And then international, intersectoral coordination and the collaboration. And this has been supported especially by the way the NDP3 is set, that we no longer work in sectors, we are working in program groups. So science, technology, and innovation at the Office of the President, we lead that science, technology, and innovation program group. So all research, whether you are in Ministry of Agriculture or Health, is coordinated at this particular platform. So the vision now is to have a science-led socioeconomic transformation and growth. And the mission is to make sure we maximize the benefits of science and technology to advance the various aspects of life. The core values, we called it skilled, a skilled nation. We have stewardship, that's the S, the knowledge, integrity, loyalty, collaboration, excellence, and development. Those are the things that we are guiding the new STI. The strategic objectives is, one is to establish a streamlined institutional framework for effective coordination of the national science, technology, and innovation system in the country. As again, I mentioned, the ministry has been converted into a secretariat. Maybe let me not say converted, but as it was abolished, instead of setting up another ministry-like structure under Office of the President, we're setting up a secretariat. Conduct detailed analysis, because we are now looking at research, looking at the market, both internally and externally. And then we want to harness science, technology, and innovation to facilitate increased industrialization, commercialization, productivity, and enterprise development. Those are key things that are guiding the decisions. Then we want to mobilize, coordinate, and avail funding and other resources to support science, technology, and innovation along the nationally prioritized industrial value chains. Institute a conducive policy, legal, regulatory. We are going to review quite a lot of policies and laws, and then provide scientific policy guidance to the nation. Lastly, the last component is we have, instead of going for all research all over the world, which is really good, we are zeroing on taking an approach of industrial value chains. And what this means is whatever area we pick, we support basic research, product development, field testing, manufacturing, consumer confidence, that's all the marketing, branding, and everything. So instead of pursuing 1,000 different researches, we'll select a few, see where do we have the knowledge already, where are we at in some issues, we already have some prototypes, and we have some focused work until we have something on the market or something is available for use in the nation. We are not going for everything, and we are guided in what we are choosing by the needs. We are looking at items that will transform how our people live and do business. We have been doing work for decades and decades, and our people still live in darkness. They don't have water close. They are cooking using diminishing firewood. So we are focusing on areas of need. Then the other one is advantage, where we have competitive advantage. And then we are also looking at markets, and then we are looking at potential growth. So those principles guide the prioritization of what we select to work on as the new formation. Let me talk about the think tanks. Think tanks have taken the work of thinking and planning away from the center to the scientific and research fraternity. And this is where you need to find yourself. Currently, we have six think tanks, and it is ongoing. Membership is free. You find where you fit, and you join and contribute. And that's where all the identification of priorities, the planning, the research teams are being formed. So we have the pathogen economy, which deals with everything to do with pathogens, pathogens for humans, for plants. So all the research on vaccines, medicines, diagnostics, chemicals, all that work is coordinated at the pathogen economy think tank. Then engineering, engineering think tank has scientists across this country. This is led by Professor Chiravira at Makerere University. You can reach out to him if you belong to that and participate in the discussion. I personally enjoy all the discussions and the planning and identification of priorities. Then we have beauty and apparel. This includes all the textiles. And it's a pity that, you know, as a country which was cotton growing, which we really are importing 99% of what we wear and what we use in this. And so we lack jobs. Mobility is to do with vehicles. So this beauty and apparel is chaired by Dr. Edwin Kamala. Then mobility is chaired by Paul Musasizi of Chira Motors. Then agroeconomy, I'm still setting that up. I'm still looking for a chair whom I will have. These are powerful entities where all the decisions, and we are working together across government, different people from health research institutions, agriculture. So long as your area fits there, the meetings take place on Zoom, so people are invited. And then the digital economy. So we have these 6 platforms where researchers should go and contribute. This is, if you contact Mary can give you the contacts of the chairs. The Zoom links are usually shared. Digital meets on Monday, 7 to 9. Engineering meets on Tuesday. Beauty and apparel meets on Friday. Mobility meets on Saturday. Pathogen economy is yet to establish. And agroeconomy, we are beginning to meet on Wednesday. At the beginning, I'm participating in all to give it direction. After some of the meetings, these think tanks were represented in the planning to reshape what has gone into the new National Planning Authority, together with the National Planning Authority, because we are reshaping what is in there for STI in the NDP3. So we work across this canvas. We are looking at research we need to develop. There are things we need to develop. Where are the researchers who are working on design, the engineering, in testing, the academia. Then we make, there's developing, then there is making, where these are the different areas of need. Then in the marketing, sometimes we produce our things, but still the imported ones dominate and we can't sell out. Helping people to use, for example, there are electric motorcycles on market now developed locally, but do people know how to use them? Then we are also looking at the policy standards and regulations. We are looking at the products which are coming out, looking at building the human capital, building the industries, that the factories, because we're really going both for cottage industries, but also very commercial industries, and then infrastructure. So we have selected value chains because of their promise based on what we had earlier. So we have analyzed seriously, and the think tanks are still platforms for analysis. My call for the scientists: you've done a great job. You've done a lot of publications in universities. Our rating is on publications. We are woefully doing badly on patents. So my call is, can we begin to shift from public or perish to produce or perish? And for financing, from donor dependency to independence and interdependence. I'm not saying we should do away with donor funding, but we should negotiate better, understand the hidden, the fine print, and negotiate better so that we can benefit. So how do I support researchers directly? I'm inviting all the researchers to collaborate across the different value chains, especially the think tanks, promote working in the multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral, and multi-institutional, really working to break the silos, encourage you to build, the innovators to build quality in their research, and we have put up some good systems. So I intend to grow and groom scientists to reduce the brain drain, trying to even bring back some, because this is a serious take of time for Uganda. We've put up facilitative facilities that researchers can come. Human capital development, we are going to be working seriously to develop skilled, as our values say, skilled people. We have a lot of people trained with masters, but when you put them on to work, they are not very skilled on the production lines. And then there are so many areas. I want to end by mentioning 3 areas where you can contribute. One, we have set up a one-stop center. It is still virtual, but as we set onto the new office space, there is going to be a physical space where innovators, educated or not educated, can come and be guided and supported on their ideas. In the Innovation Exchange Center, you have an idea, you can't take it far. You want somebody to pick it up. You can either trade it in for sale or for share in the future. And then also to provide a home for scientists. We realize that most scientists didn't have any government sector to speak for them. A few, like health, those in the health, they have Ministry of Health, but many of them just didn't have a place where they are advocated for. So that is also. So in summary, research in Uganda has gone through phases. The first phase was pre-colonial, where we had indigenous science, technology, and innovation, and we had local generation. Phase 2, we became clients and users of science made elsewhere. That was during the colonial period. Basically, our science was stopped and we were told it was backward, it didn't work, and your goats are poor, your chicken don't produce enough, but nothing is done to develop them. And we became consumers of externally generated technology. Phase 3, we went into the slave model, where government didn't really fund productive research, and we became participants. And this slave model, incidentally, has developed a lot of capacity in the country. And now we are on phase 4, where we are focusing on productive research. Government is providing funding, and we are focused on commercialization. I therefore invite you to join me in this drive. Science knows no country, because knowledge belongs to humanity and is the torch which illuminates the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that presentation. Very insightful, very educative. I picked two quotes that talk to me directly. Knowledge needs to be exploited to be useful, and of course, produce or perish. And very interesting that you've talked about the think tanks. The chat went on fire when you talked about think tanks, and each one of us found ourselves going to the different think tanks and having our research falling in the different
We
areas.
can't hear you well. I don't know if others are hearing, but your voice is too low.
Oh, sorry about that. I hope this is better now. So thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that presentation.
No
Members?
difference.
But we can hear. We can hear.
We can hear him well. Maybe just increase your volume.
We can hear.
Yeah, true, we
Okay,
can hear him.
Thank you very much, members. And some members have been asking, can we put a name to that voice? My name is John Baptist Imokola. I am a lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University and also a PhD candidate. Very insightful presentation from the minister. Now allow me welcome my colleague, Dr. Angela Napakol, to take us through the discussion and question and answer session. There are some reactions to the minister's presentation, and we want to spend a few minutes to discuss this before we cross on to other things. Dr. Napakol?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Napakol, as has been introduced. I work with Uganda Christian University, and I head the Department of Communication under the Faculty of Journalism. I'm very grateful to be here. Minister, thank you so much for those words. They are encouraging, they are eye-opening, and I'm glad that I got an opportunity to be part of this meeting. Thank you so much, John, for the work that you have put in. Now we're going to go start our discussion, but just in brief, I would like to, there are a few things that I really appreciated from the discussion from the minister. The fact that we've been in this slave model for quite a while, and it looks like we've been moving around as headless chickens, but this is eye-opening, and to know that we are now in phase 4 of the phases of innovation and research. And this is encouraging to, I'm sure, to many of the people who are here, the fact that government is now focusing, is now intentional about research and innovation. So there's so many things that were mentioned, and I think I don't want to go back and summarize all of them, but let's go straight into the questions. I think what we're going to do is we are going to read out about 3 questions, then the minister can respond, and then afterwards we read other questions. So there was a question from Robert Setekera, and he says that what could be the key hindering factors that stop us as researchers from putting to action or building visible industries around our knowledge and to make it relevant to our nation? So what could be, I think the minister has hinted on some of those factors, but maybe Robert needs a little bit more on that. And then still, I think it was Robert. Yes, it was Robert again. He says, can bridging the gap between industries and academia through engaging industry experts to lecture in universities help to accelerate translation of research findings into usable business solutions? This is Robert again. And then Dr. Gadruzaza says knowledge translation and support for operational research appears to be part of the challenge. So that was more of a statement. Maybe he can, maybe the minister can hit on that briefly. And someone made a comment from Professor Stella Nima. I'm stopping at this and then the minister can respond to that. She says that the slave model is very typical of Uganda/developing countries. I have participated personally in this model. My best output was publications. And I think for many of us, that is the experience. So Minister MUSENERO, if you can comment on those, and then we can continue with the rest of the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. What could be the hindrance to making sure that researchers translate their ideas into building industries? One, at the gate, at the entrance to this is the lack of awareness. As Mundisco said, I discovered real innocent lack of awareness that the work that I am doing here is supposed to lead to an industry. I have seen that over and over. Researchers see themselves as generators of knowledge. And of recent, they have been able to move some of their knowledge to a bit of prototypes. But you know, there are products such as, I have done this work, I am going to convert it into a book and put it on the shelves. We publish, knowing very well that when you do a scientific or a technical publication, we will not read it. And it's not likely to be used even in future teaching because we don't teach that way. So there's been that genuine lack of awareness. Secondly, the innovation system is not complete. So it is like an incomplete circuit. As a researcher, you are supposed to be part of an ecosystem. You're supposed to be part of a chain, a relay. You generate knowledge. If you are the type that hands that knowledge into products and prototypes, but then there should be someone to receive it. If every researcher moves out of the university with their one product, then we kill research. But the way, if you don't research with that intention in mind, then your outputs cannot be passed over. They are not the type that, then the other one is downstream. When you talk about industries, we have two categories of industries in Uganda. The first category are our very crude ones, where people have tried to do something and develop, you know, herbal soap, herbal creams, some crude way we are making juice. We don't really have indigenously industrialized places where research will go and fit in. Then the other category are imported industries. I come from China or India, I come and set up, but really my technology is completely disconnected from the local ones. When I need a spare part, I go back there and bring one. When I need, so there is a gap in the middle there. The third one is the skilling. We have a lot of very highly knowledgeable, low-skilled people, PhDs, who cannot do something practical. So the lack of skilled workforce that translates those that high knowledge. So there are many things that have come up, and I'm strategically and really working on them so that we can make sure that we begin to harness this, or we are doomed, because we have finished all our natural resources. And anything else, if you try to produce agricultural crops now with artificial fertilizers, yes, you'll produce more, but at a loss. We have to we just must generate technology. So the gaps are many, and as you come and we discuss together, we'll be able to do that. Then bridging the gap with industrial people, again, this is a challenge. We don't have a lot of relevancy of what is happening, what is being taught in our universities and linked to what is going on in the industries. Very little is happening, and if there is a research, it somehow involves maybe one or two professors, a small research center. There is no deliberate effort to link either from the industrial people, because I've not really found a lot of industries that have a local R&D component. I'm working actively to make sure that that is there, so that everything that we have has potential for localization of some of the inputs, but most of our big industries do not have that. So we will have to be very, very intentional so that they come and tell us what they do. And that is where the researchers can then begin to look for inputs. Then the operational research, yes, of course, that is important. Last night, we were on the beauty and apparel think tank and wondering, why is it that why is it that we have all these scattered retailers? None of them is doing well. You don't see them that they are growing, but we have not structured this industry of textile. What's the problem? And well, the first thing was like, let's do a research. Let's find out why this market is segmented like this. So indeed, that is very important. And the comment of the slave model, I'm glad that scientists take it positively. I thought initially that they would be offended, but it's the reality. And we need to wake up, and wake up carefully, but definitely wake up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are picking quite a lot. I, for one, yeah, I'm amazed at what we have as a country and how little we are aware of it, and how little we're aware that our research can actually be translated. Maybe we're aware, but we seem as if our hands are tied. So maybe this discussion helps us to open up those hands, open up the discussion and see the possibilities. Now, let's go straight into other questions. We have a comment, and I think this has already been touched on. I don't remember the name, I didn't write it down, but it says, if we have all this capacity in research, what is the actual problem? This has already been touched on, but if the minister wishes, she can say something more. And then how can this research be translated into the development of Uganda? This is really the discussion we're having. So again, that can also be touched on. So let's continue with our questions. Robert Seketera again says, can Uganda become a technology giant? Only 3 international grants? If not, what could be done in short or long term? So he's looking at both the short term and long term. And then Franklin Hijeni says, the minister is spot on about the last model. I think that is the slave model. I think that has touched many of us actually. And then Dr. Ruzaza says, thank you, Minister. We congratulate you upon this noble role. And he says, how can organizations such as NIMRA bring together researchers and academia to further engage in Uganda's research ecosystem? He also says, I love the idea about the think tank. Thank you. And then someone is saying, could Mary advise on where those of us in humanities can make a contribution to STI? So I think the discussion, part of the things that have come up are the fact that humanities are missing in the discussion of the STI and also in the think tanks, because I see there is something about education. Where is the aspect of education? Because I think this is coming in, number one, because we have education is on the platform in Uganda as researchers as well, but we also know that our education system, right from primary school to secondary and university, might be part of the hindrance to innovation. So someone brought that up, and I think that's really nice. We also have someone talking about recreation and leisure, saying where is this located when we talk about the think tank? And then the last one, as I give the minister time to respond, says, wonderful presentation, Honorable Minister. Excuse me. Wonderful presentation, Honorable Minister. I agree with you to the dot. We are ready to support we are ready to support our efforts, your efforts, as that are aimed at transforming our motherland. So that is a compliment. Minister, you can say something on that, and then we go to the last questions. Or maybe there are not so many, forgive me. I could just read out the last two, and then we conclude. I can read out the last two. So, research and innovation for Uganda to transform from peasant economy to high income country. Ready to support you, Minister. So that is also a message of support. That is by Harriet Nachigozi. And Justin says, thank you, Honorable Minister. That was an insightful discussion indeed. We would like to join, and she would like to join the agroeconomy think tank. Lastly, there is need, this is by Goreti Nagawa, there is need to transform the education system into producing graduates who are technically skilled. This will fill a big gap in turning research results into industrial and other innovations, and will feel, okay, yeah, I think that's a repetition, a need for funding academic innovators and proprietors. So we can respond to that unless any other question comes up. So far, that's what we have.
Thank you very much. Let me attempt to respond to some of these. I think I have talked about how can research be translated into development. Basically, there are only two ways that you can attain development. The first one is by exploiting the raw materials and natural resources that you have in their raw form. And as you all know, when by the time the colonialists came to countries like Uganda and other parts of Africa, we were really virgin land, so virgin that primary production was brought here, was moved here, that you can produce coffee with no fertilizer, you can produce cotton, there were rainforests, and if you exploit that and market it, you'll have economic growth up to a point when you hit a plateau, when there is no more growth. And if you continue just exploiting, you reach a point of decline. So Uganda has gone through that. We have already exploited most of the natural resources that could be harvested in their own form, in that natural form. We hit a plateau. And if nothing is done now to inject technology to increase the yield of what we have, we shall be sliding and declining. So now we have no choice. We actually have no choice but to inject science, technology, and innovation such that we can harness the hidden values. You can cut down a tree, but it takes knowledge to convert that tree into a table, and more to convert it into a high value table, so that you add more and you can sell higher value, because knowledge adds value to something, knowledge and skill. So the only way we can translate the huge amount of knowledge is to first to realize that we cannot continue the way we have been going. And we cannot just continue the way we have been going, because it's not going to take us where we want to go. Two, for us to realize that we can change and we can harness, and just the mindset change that, yes, I need to log. I've been meeting researchers and they are like, oh my God, but we depend on donor funding. I said, but you don't have to stop donor funding, but you can negotiate better now that you are aware. And let me make a statement here. No single person will give you money unless there is a product at the end and they see greater value in that product than the money they have given you. Just always keep that at the back of your mind and read below in the root cause. Look at the root cause and try as much as possible to negotiate your benefit, because scientists are giving away their knowledge and their work and their time in ignorance and feeling like you're favored, you're funded, you're what. In the end, they retire poor. They don't leave a legacy. The equipment they bought for the lab just deteriorates, yet they worked so hard because you did not put a business model to this. And so all that you have built goes down with you. How can NIMRA, organizations like this, one, you have already given me a cross-section of scientists, and so this can act as a springboard for scientists to go to the different think tanks, and also by continuing to mentor these scientists in the right way. We are reorganizing the scaling for STI platform. You come and participate so that we can work together to see which are the relevant skills that we should focus on. And then humanities. Now, this is one of the things that I have worked on. Break down the silos. There is no single profession that can industrialize a nation. Every one of these is useful and is beneficial, but if you are networked in the right network. For example, without communication, and I've been searching for people to help me communicate science, but if no one is there and very skilled to communicate the science, we are all working under a bushel. Nobody knows what we are doing. And this has happened in Uganda because many of you guys work for publications. No Ugandan reads your publication, so they don't think you're relevant. They don't know how important you are until you do something here. Like, I have done a lot of work. The only thing Ugandans know is a communicator has helped me to do that. We have technologies that have failed to be adopted because we don't understand our people. We don't understand the thinking. So all of us need to gel together into a network that is complementary rather than thinking about profession, or find yourself on that think tank and see what is going on and find where you fit in, because your absence is going to fail the whole thing. So let's stop thinking about sectors. Let's stop thinking about my discipline. Bring your competency to fit into the system. We need everybody to participate if we are going to take off. Education, of course, is a challenge. The issue is, where do you begin? This colonial education system has been locked, because when you try to open it, the people trying to open it are the same people who are products of the same system. So we end up recycling the same thing. But I believe that when we begin at the point of scaling a certain category of people, we begin to produce industries, then there will be a flow back in both directions. Up to the universities now, you have no choice but to change back and do a diploma in order to be employed, because if not a diploma, not a postgraduate diploma, it's just not, it's not able. We need to go back, build people with skill. Leisure, it's the same, just like I said. Leisure should fit in. I mean, when somebody thinking about a functional vehicle, for you, you'll bring in the concept of what about a leisure vehicle? What about a, just come in, just go onto the think tanks. I recommend just if you get the calendar, just sit in all of them and see where you fit. If you don't have a specific technical skill, they are all multi-sectoral. There are all sorts of people there. Then research and innovation for Uganda, you are ready to support. I welcome that very well. Transformation of the education system is only going to come if we have an idea of what we want. As long as all we want is kids to get 4 at P7, to get 8 at O level, to get 20 something points at A level, and get a first class at university. If that is all we want from the education system, it will not change. But if we change that, we want transformed lives in Uganda, that we will not be having people who have graduated with the first class environmental science at university, but they cannot convert, they cannot help an environmental something practically. Or we have first class engineers who cannot produce a bicycle, and we still have to import everything from China. Then we are not going to transform the education system. But once the industrial framework as ecosystem begins to change, then we will change education. You will not even need a review of curriculum. It will just evolve organically. So again, I don't know if, let me end my comments by saying we have 2 big goals. The first goal is socioeconomic transformation. Socioeconomic transformation means changing the way our people live and how they do their business. How they live is, can we help our grandmothers and mothers stop living in darkness? Can we help them stop going out of the house to go to toilet in the middle of the night? Can we help to bring water closer so they don't have to go very far from home just to collect water? Then how they do their business? Can we, as scientists and researchers, help them from using such crude implements in their production? Can we help that man in Chikubo stop carrying 150 kilograms on his back and climbing upstairs, not because he's a weightlifter, but because he has to earn a living? And we cannot invent something that helps him to stand and lift that luggage and not damage his life. The second big, that is the socioeconomic transformation. The economic growth is, can I have Ugandan made knives in your kitchens instead of Chinese ones? Can I have some Ugandan made clothes or accessories that you get out of your house with instead of only Chinese, so that I can provide jobs, so that we can provide jobs? If, as long as we are sending all the jobs outside, can we have some manufactured goods from coming out of the university and replacing the day-to-day goods that we use? Even if we don't have external market, we have a lot. We have 42 million Ugandans. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk with you today.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Social transformation, that hit home. The fact that up to today, we actually, even ourselves, many of us, when we travel to our villages, actually have to get out of the house to go somewhere, and if we need easement, and the fact that I think we overlook, we think they are such small things, but if we actually did pay attention, I think that would be the start of innovation. One of the things that I'm also going to take home from this is the fact that we should learn to negotiate better, and let the international community look at what we need and not what they need. I think for a very long time, what has happened is because we want some money, we want funding. Someone comes with their agenda and we jump on board. And even with the publications, we are either we publish as a second author, third author, fourth author, meaning we're just aiding, just helping out. We do a lot of work, but we actually don't recognize what we have done. And then the idea of publish or perish or innovate or perish. For me, those are some of the things that have stood out. Thank you so much. And of course, Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. We talk about it, but I don't know if many of us really do mean what we say. It's easy to say, it's a catchy statement, but we actually put it into action. Thank you so much. We now have.
Can you give me half a minute to make a request?
Sorry?
I have heard there are communicators on this platform. And
Yes.
I have a special request that you can help me to package this message and we really get it out wide for the public to understand and for this wider scientific community. I don't have communicators with me yet. So if there are those who are doing and you think this is a good message, I welcome an offer for anybody who can help me to package the message so that we can really begin to get it out so we can move our country forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. I am actually one of those communicators. We'll definitely be getting in touch. I think John Baptist Mokola also has a bit of science communication in there. And we will organize, we will look around for other people just in case you need a team, but I'm part of those communicators. So we will reach out and figure out how to move forward from this. So right now we have